There we go. I'm obviously not the AV guy. Everyone's got drinks, refreshments, food. Yep, all good. All right. So this next part's going to be essentially me grilling these. No, I'm not going to grill you. Look, we've got Jake Morrison and Nilu Chapi here from Asset Legal. Essentially, these guys are absolute lifesavers and work really well with our business. They look after the conveyancing side of the property journey, and I'll let them run through in a bit more detail what that entails. But first and foremost, guys, just give us, Nilu, you've got the microphone. I'll start with you. Just give us a quick run through of how you got into conveyancing, of all things.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here this evening. Thank you so much for the intro. So again, I'm Nilu. I'm a solicitor at Asset Legal, and I've been in the industry for just over 5 years now. And when I was actually studying law, I truthfully didn't really like property law at all. But in my last year, we have to do some placement. So I ended up working at a property law firm that predominantly did conveyancing. And that's where I really actually found that it was quite different in practice. And my love for it actually began. So I think what drew me to it the most was establishing and developing relationships with clients and essentially handling the legalities that are involved with acquiring their dream properties. And it really aligned with my views of being of service to others. So yeah, and I've been with Asset Legal for just over 2 years now, and very grateful to say that I'm with a wonderful company and we have a great team. So.
Is that a raise?
You just got one.
And Jake, what about yourself? I know you've been on the podcast before, and this, for anyone that doesn't know, we do a beers and buying podcast where we usually crack a beer at the start, and it's all a bit of fun. But Jake's been on before, but mate, just give everyone a bit of a run through here around your journey into getting into property.
So when I finished uni, I did law and business, majoring in accounting. At the time when I finished, I couldn't get a gig in a law firm, so I actually went down the accounting path, and I worked in business recovery and insolvency. So working with a lot of companies that had gone bust. So I put up with that for about a year. Then I went back into the law, did a bit of insurance litigation for sort of 3 years. And again, just quite negative work. So similar to what Nilu said, what we do now is, helping people on their biggest, life decision or life purchase to date, acquiring property. So that sort of resonates with me. After I got out of insurance litigation, I got into working for a few different property law firms and started Asset Legal 3.5 years ago. Since we started, we've helped 4,000. We've done 4,000 property settlements. Majority of those buyers. We deal a lot with buyers agents and brokers. So our blend of work is 75-25 working for purchasers. So we're well abreast of how to get a file settled and what to advise first home buyers on, essentially.
And so I think probably one of the critical questions is, anyone that's been sitting here tonight that's been looking at some of those sums that came through in terms of the conveyancing costs and all those types of things is ultimately what's a conveyancer's role in actually the whole home buying journey?
Nilu?
Well, there's quite a bit involved, but essentially a conveyancing solicitor, what I do is handle the legal side of transferring ownership of property from a seller to a buyer, and that involves quite a few things. So we look at the contracts before they're actually signed. Ideally, we do a review of them. We give our clients advice throughout, and that advice can begin from before they even sign the property, as I mentioned. And we help clients stay aware of when their due dates are so they don't miss any. We assist with any negotiations. We communicate with other professionals that are working alongside us, like brokers, the agents, to make sure everyone's on the same page and everything runs smoothly. We also then make sure that the legal documents are drafted correctly and taken care of on the back end, and we communicate with the banks to make sure we book in settlement and then effect settlement at the end of the day as well.
So for any home buyers out there that are looking to start their journey, when would be the best time to be getting in contact with you guys, during that process?
I would say pretty much as soon as you've been pre-approved, to reach out to your conveyancer of choice, have a chat, get your head around what their fees are, what timing is going to be in terms of getting a contract reviewed. That's always very important. We'll hear from a buyer's agent shortly about the importance of time and getting things done urgently. So, the more you can kind of do before you found the property in terms of having those conversations and getting a feel for things, it's going to put you in a better stead to secure the property. In terms of how we operate from a fees perspective, I think a lot of people, I suppose, when they think of dealing with a lawyer, they think every time I speak to a lawyer or every time I interact with a lawyer, I'm going to be charged a certain fee. Conveyancing is predominantly fixed fee. The fees for a buyer range anywhere from sort of $1,500 up to sort of $3,000. But what you'll generally get consistently is a fixed fee, wherever that lay in that sort of that scale. So I suppose the message there is, if it's a fixed fee, you'd rather be getting in touch with your conveyancer earlier. They're not going to charge you any more if you're getting in touch with them 3 weeks before you secure a property, as opposed to, waiting after you've secured the property. I've had some clients send us the contract. Believe it or not, they've gone through the conditional phase by themselves. They've satisfied their finance, they've satisfied their building and pest, and then they realise they can't settle on a property, so they've engaged us sort of 2 weeks from settlement. So we still charge them the same amount. I actually put on an urgency fee on that particular file. So a bit of a lesson there. Engage early.
Yeah. And in terms of that process that they go through, so obviously, I think one of the great things about Asset Legal, and I've said this before on the podcast as well, but one of the really great things about you guys is you don't necessarily charge for someone reviewing the contract. And so I think the real benefit there is someone's not out of pocket, every time they're going to put an offer on a property, they're not out of pocket $200 or $300 like they might be with some other firms. And the other really great thing about you guys is also the fact of just like the communication style that you've got with the clients. I think one of the big takeaways, and you can ask, the buyers agents and the real estate agents that are here tonight, really with conveyancing, I think you definitely pay for what you get. And I know you guys can kind of attest to that as well. So it's kind of like, yes, there are some ones there that are dirt cheap. You'll pretty much have to be running around and doing everything yourself, which when you're buying your first home, you kind of don't want to be doing. Now, in terms of like when they get that or when you guys get the contract, I should say, what are some kind of key things that you're typically always looking out for whenever it comes to things within the contract that maybe might be good for the home buyers in the room to know?
Yeah, so if you're buying a unit or a townhouse that has a body corporate involved, for example, there should be a disclosure statement that's provided by the seller. So we always suggest getting a copy of that and reviewing it, because it'll have super important information about annual levies that you'll be paying. And additionally, we would always recommend that a inspection of the body corporate records also be done, because that'll detail any body corporate financials, any minutes, bylaws of the body corporate. And in particular with those financials, we might look at, for example, the sinking fund, which is a fund the body corporate has to pay for any repairs that need to be done within the body corporate. And if that's not up to scratch, then it could mean that buyers have to actually fork out more money on top of those annual levies to pay that off. And that's obviously not ideal. So something you really want to be looking at. Another thing is also checking the title search always. It's not always attached to the contract, but having a look at that will give you an idea of what is registered on title, so easements and encumbrances or other things which may impact an owner's rights and obligations.
Yeah, just going on from the, and I suppose first home buyer, most of you would be in the buying, looking at townhouses and units, I'm guessing. So I suppose the advice around the body corporate disclosures very relevant for you.
What's the risk there, right? What's the risk then for the home buyers when you guys identify something like that?
Right. So with the disclosure statement, essentially, as Nilu said, it just gives you an outline of what the levies are, gives you a snapshot of what the sinking fund is, what the balance is, what's in the admin fund, whether there's correct insurance in place, and whether there's any defects within the body corporate that you need to be aware of. What it doesn't give you, the disclosure statement under the current framework, it doesn't give you a sinking fund forecast, so actually what should be in the sinking fund. It also doesn't give you the minutes of the most recent AGM, which in my opinion is quite pivotal. I'll tell you why. Probably about a year ago, I had a client buy a townhouse, and they'd signed it essentially cash unconditional to secure it. given the market. We did subsequently do a review of the body corporate records. The sinking fund was about 40 grand, and there was supposed to be nearly $500,000 in the sinking fund. So they had some rather urgent repairs they needed to do to rectify some items within the common property. What that meant for that buyer was they had no out in the contract because it wasn't subject to formal body corporate records approval. It then meant that somewhere down the path, there'd have to be a special levy to get that sinking fund back to where it should be in line with the forecast. So when a buyer comes to us, one of the first, and is looking at buying into a community title scheme, unit or townhouse, one of the first questions we'll ask is what body corporate documents have you been given by the agent? Agents are getting progressively better, in my opinion. We're moving towards a new framework that's coming in August, all on seller's disclosure. So I think agents are progressively improving the amount of documents they're providing to buyers.
Do you actually just want to, I thought that'd be a really good point. Do you want to run through for anyone that doesn't necessarily know what that means, what that looks like right now and kind of what era we're going into with regards to that?
So currently when you're buying unit townhouse, you'll get a disclosure statement, and it really, the information in there is quite basic, essentially. For a house, no disclosure statement. But come 1 August this year, selling property in Queensland, you have to provide a disclosure statement, whether it's a house or a unit. And the amount of information that goes into that disclosure statement is a lot more thorough than there currently is. So if you're in the market to buy at the moment, pending whether you're buying before 1 August or 1 August, it'll be a different, definitely a different buying experience and what you get. But yeah, look, the message, I suppose, is to get the review or just reach out to your conveyancer, not necessarily using us, any conveyancer, before you sign a contract. They'll work out what documents the agent has given you, and they'll sort of plug the gaps. And, you know, if it is a matter that you're trying to secure the property and keep your conditions down as low as possible, you'd hope the conveyancer can give you a bit of an assessment of what your risks are going forward without the documents.
What sort of, in terms of, like, let's say you guys getting those body corporate documents, what's the kind of lead time that you would generally need? And obviously, I'm assuming all of them are a little bit different, but what would be the lead time you'd need to assess something like that?
About 5 days, as an average. We try to, 5 days at the moment. Yeah, about 5 business days. So you generally a 7-day condition, which would line up with your building and pest.
Yeah.
We can get them urgently. You know, everything comes at a price, so you pay an urgency fee. Not to us, to our search provider.
Okay. And so
just thought I'd put that in there.
And so I think you've just mentioned something else within there as well. So kind of what I'm leaning into my next question is, can we just break down those conditions a little bit more in terms of like those pivotal ones whenever it goes into the offer, right?
Mm.
So, you know, deposit, finance, like what does that kind of look like on your end?
Well, in terms of finance, building and pest, settlement, you always want to make sure that you're communicating with the professionals working alongside you, because it will really just depend on what time frame the building and pest inspector can meet and what time frame your broker can meet, especially in your specific circumstances, because obviously no 2 loans are going to be the same, no 2 people are going to be the same. So at the same time, you need to take their advice and actually put in an offer that's going to reflect that advice while also making it as competitive as possible so you don't miss out. So some people may put in a 21-day or 14-day finance clause when in reality, if they'd just spoken to their broker, they may have only needed 7 or 10. And that could have, you know, gotten them across the line. But very important to speak to other professionals to determine that.
What about building and pest? And obviously report gets back. Maybe there's a couple of things on there that, you know, someone didn't expect when they've gone to buy the property. What kind of, is there levers that you can potentially pull? What kind of options does the buyer have at that point in time when they get a report back, whenever it comes to the legal side of it?
So Queensland's very big, or Australia's very big on consumer protection. So the contracts are very heavily weighted in the buyer's favour when it comes to negotiating under a building and pest. What I mean by that is you don't necessarily have to have major defects in a building and pest report to be able to get out of a contract. You only just need to have minor defects. So once the inspection's occurred, client receives a report and has a chat to us. We'll obviously go through with them, give them the advice. To your question, the options are essentially accept the report as is, move forward, terminate the contract, get your deposit back, or 3, negotiate. And when it comes to negotiate, there's 2 options there. One is to get a price reduction. So essentially, if you agree to pay $700, the defects that are noted in the report are enough to substantiate a $10,000 price reduction, for example. You take on those, you take the property as is, get the reduction at settlement. The other option is you ask the seller to undertake the repairs and rectify the defects prior to settlement. So that's essentially your 2 options. What we recommend if you go down path 2 is to always ensure that you've got an opportunity to re-inspect prior to settlement to make sure the works are to your satisfaction. We'll always word that clause or that satisfaction or waiver. I can see Nilu just over here, hopefully agreeing with me. To always ensure that you're getting invoices and you're using the word to your satisfaction when you're satisfying the building and pest. That's critically important. The last thing you want to do is get to settlement, get to your pre-settlement inspection, and have a dispute with the sales agent in relation to whether something's been done satisfactorily or not. Yep.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that as well. Yeah. It might seem obvious, but not always to some. So when you are negotiating to have works done prior to settlement, it's not always sufficient to just get a verbal agreement via the agent or the seller directly even, because we have had instances in the past where, buyers have relied on that verbal agreement, and then come settlement, they've gone to the pre-settlement inspection, it's not done, and by settlement, the works aren't completed, but they don't have anything to really hold the seller accountable against, because they haven't put that agreement in writing. So it's super important that it's done correctly via solicitors. Otherwise, you're just relying on them being good and nice.
Guys, can I just get a round of applause for Jake and Nilu? Thanks so much, guys.